Hi friends, we're going to do some problem solving. We're going to look at questions 1 and 3, and then we're going to try to apply the principles we learned to try to look at these questions. And then I want you to try to do questions 2 and 4 for yourself so that you have some kind of practice to do on your own. In number 1, we have, and feel free to pause the video just if you're confused, if you want to think about the question before hearing me explain it. But we're going to start off with question 1 and 3. In question 1, we see that Chinese economic planners carefully control the nation's economy, and that China is an example of A, a command economy, B, a market economy, C, a mixed economy, D, a traditional economy. So the idea is that they're talking about Chinese economic planners carefully control the nation's economy. That means there's some kind of control involved. And when they're referring to the economic planners, they're probably talking about the government, they're probably talking about some sort of state agency, they're talking about people who have the ability to control these kinds of decisions. So it already feels like it's not a traditional economy because we have no idea about whether or not it's doing things like it has historically been done. There is no information given as to whether or not it's a traditional economy. It also doesn't seem to be a mixed economy because it seems like the economic planners are the ones making all the kinds of decisions. It's not said um, that people, consumers, producers, they have some sort of say in the decision making, and combined with the economic planners, they also have some decision-making power. It's not a mixture of those two kinds of people, right? It says very specifically, economic planners carefully control the nation's economy. So it doesn't feel like a mixed economy either, because for it to be a mixed economy, you'd need a balance. You'd need both of those kinds of people, the government and the decision makers, and you'd want some consumers, some producers involved in the kinds of decisions that are being made. It also doesn't seem like a market economy because a market economy, as you know, is one that's driven by consumers, by producers. We covered what producers and consumers are in our first few videos. And it doesn't seem like to be a market economy because consumers and producers, the people like us, right, aren't making decisions here. It's the economic planners controlling the nation's economy. So it does seem like it's a command economy. And if you guess the answer, good for you, because it is a command economy, because the economic planners are the ones carefully controlling the nation's economy. That means they're the main ones making all the decisions. And hence, since we're talking about China, China does seem to be an example of a command economy. So in this question, notice what we did. We didn't directly try to find the answer. Even though if you knew the answer directly, that's great for you. What we did is what we call the process of elimination, where we try to eliminate answers based on the information we've been given, and then we try to pick the best possible answer that's remaining, which in this case was the command economy. If you know the answer directly, that's great. But in economics, most of these questions often aren't as straightforward. So it's oftentimes important to kind of do a workaround, use the process of elimination to make the process easier for you. Because sometimes there are two questions that are a bit confusing, two answers that are a bit confusing, are very similar. There can be answers that are like both seem right to you. And it's not just about economics, it's about any multiple choice questions. You can use the process of elimination to try to find the correct answer. Let's move on to question number 3. How are mixed and market economies similar? So before we look at the answers, let's think about how mixed and market economies are similar. They're similar in the sense that both of them have producers and consumers having some sort of decision making power. There's some sort of say, some sort of freedom to show and express their interests, the things they want to buy, and have some sort of involvement in the decisions that they kind of want to make. But also because consumers and producers have kind of like agency and kind of have that ability to make decisions. What it also ultimately means is that there tends to be like a decent amount of free flowing information, free flowing exchange of goods and services. There seems to be a lot of trade involved. Like goods and services there tends to be a free exchange of them because like everything isn't constricted by the kinds of decisions that the government is making, because producers and consumers have some sort of autonomy, right? In both mixed and market economies. So let's look at the responses, right? says both rely on producers to make all economic decisions. That is not true because, as we just talked about, that consumers have some sort of a say in it. Producers do have some say, but it's not just producers; it's also consumers. So A might seem appealing because we did talk about producers, but it's not because guess what? Consumers also have some kind of a say in that. Let's look at both have no government regulation. That's not true because in mixed economies we know that there is some government regulation. So that is not true that both have no government regulation. So we know that A is not true. We know that B is not true. Let's look at C. Both usually have very rapid economic growth. See, that's the thing. This seems like an answer that we don't know about. But this is the thing. We cannot guarantee economic growth. If you think about economic growth, what does it mean? It means the economy is getting bigger, the economy is getting stronger, whatnot, without going too much into the economics of it. Do we know for certain if a country that is a market economy or a mixed economy that is going to have very, very rapid economic growth? No. In fact, we have seen around the world in a lot of cases that countries that are mixed economies, that are market economies, have not enjoyed that kind of economic growth. So oftentimes, there is no guarantee that just because you are a mixed economy, you're a market economy, you have very rapid economic growth. So C is not the answer either. What we're left with is D, which is both have a relatively free exchange of goods and services. That does seem appealing because, as we talked about, because consumers and producers make all the decisions, there seems to be a lot of trade in mixed and market economies. Both have a relatively free exchange of goods and services because the government doesn't control all the decisions. So, what does this even mean? Relatively free exchange of goods and services? Because I also talked about this earlier. It means that trade is easy. That if I want to sell something and then they get money off of it and then use the money to buy something else, it's easy for me to do so. So for example, if I want to sell something in the marketplace, I can take it to a shop, I can take it to a store, and I can sell it, get some money from it, and then I can use the money to buy some other good or some other service that I want. And it's generally considered possible in countries like ours that there is a relatively free exchange of goods and services. So option D seems like the appealing one here. I want you to try out question 2 and question 4 on your own. And I hope you have a fun time solving economic problems. This is it for the lecture. It's important to remember what command economies are, what market economies are, what mixed economies are, what traditional economies are. We already covered that a bit in the previous lecture, but it's also important to just have a rough idea of what these kinds of economies are and remember that they're all trying to answer the fundamental economic questions of what shall be produced, how they shall be produced, or for whom they shall be produced. And if you have these questions in mind in terms of organizing economies, and if you just think about the different ways the economies are structured, if you think about it's easiest to think about the extent to which the government is involved and the extent to which producers and consumers are involved. If it's a very high degree of government involvement, it's a command economy. If it's a very degree of low degree of government involvement, it's a market economy. If there's a mixture of government involvement and consumers and producers, everyone has some say. It's a mixed economy, which is the most prominent form of economy we have, and traditional economy is the exception, where it's not similar to the other kinds of economies. It's a way of organizing economies as has traditionally been done. We're talking again about hunter-gatherer societies or tribal groups that do not fit in to our traditional definitions of what we consider an economy. I hope you've had fun learning about different kinds of economies, and I hope to see you in future videos. Thank you.